and welcome back to the hottest marriage show in our neighborhood. It's I, John D.N., a.k.a. Too Much Podcast, Rescripting the culture, one conversation at a time. How are you doing, my love?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking. How was your week?
Uneventful. Yours?
It was eventful. The school year's coming down to the end, so it's the last week for me.
Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about the year I had, so yes, it's definitely good. Congratulations. Thank you so much. So, anything we can bring today?
Yeah. It's funny. Stuff will all kind of pile together and it gives you this whole idea of what you want to talk about sometimes. But so coming up on Father's Day, we're here at Father's Day. And I was thinking about forgiving the fathers this year. And don't shoot me. So the idea is that I went to go visit my brothers with my mom a couple of weeks ago. And it was funny. We were all talking about our experience with my dad. And you always think that, I don't know if now we do. I think that we've heard it enough that depending on who the kid is, they get a different parent.
You sure?
And so, but I always thought that we kind of experienced my dad the same way, except toward the end when he was getting sick. I felt like we had the same dad, but when we all talked about our experiences with him, we all had wasn't completely different people, but we definitely experienced him differently. And in having a conversation with someone else about fathers, they were talking about how, it's hard to kind of get over. I mean, we all are starting to become more of a generation where we talk about what we experienced to understanding what was right and what wasn't right. And not being able, this person was talking about not being able to really forgive who their father was and move on. But I think that we have to start forgiving the fathers. And forgiving doesn't mean that we forget what happened. It doesn't mean that our relationship with them goes on like nothing ever took place. Because we change. With every experience we have, we evolve. And there's no going back to the person you were before you experienced a certain thing. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying forgive for ourselves, not for them to be okay, but for us to be okay. And part of that I had to really come to terms with was, I think it was in our last episode of the one before that. I remember when we got off of the recording, he had said, you should watch how you talk about your dad because it, for X, Y, and Z reasons. But I always feel like when I'm talking about him, I'm always thinking about the fact that he didn't have it easy. He wasn't raised in a way that I would have raised my son. And so I understand that he was hurt and he was misguided and he lacked guidance. Not only people telling him to go in the wrong direction, but sometimes he was just standing there at crossroads and having to make the decision on his own. And so it led me to think about fathers now. Fatherhood, parenthood is one of the only jobs. I think it's the only job that you can appoint yourself to this job. And you could be completely incompetent when it comes to being in this job. And then when you think about who trains you, when you get on a job, they usually have you do onboarding with one of their competent employees, the ones who know how to do everything because they want you to do the process correctly. And we always laugh at the shows when you have somebody training and they'll be like, this is how they want you to do it, but that's not how I do it. So we're going to do it like this. And it starts the snowball effect of being a poor employee in the eyes of how corporate intends for you to work. And so if we think about fathers, they're trained by theirs or the men in their lives. So if the man is present and the man is not knowing that he's not a good example, he's passing all of these lessons on to these young men. If they're not present, then you just out here just doing whatever. And sometimes you have the moments where the men will be like, I'm going to be everything I wish I had. And I know men like that. And they'll be like, I won't ever let my son feel this way or feel that way. But there are other ones that they don't know that there's anything wrong with it. That's all they've ever known. They might have seen their friends, fathers like that too. So to them, they're doing what they're supposed to do, or they're doing what they've seen before. So it's like anything they do now is above and beyond. You know what I mean? And some people feel like if I'm better than my father, then I've already won. Okay, so you don't abuse your kids, but you also don't see them. Yeah. So we're still not winning. But at the same time, I'm saying these men are coming in and they're not being trained properly to take on the role. Yeah. And so I had to sit there and think about, and I would tell everybody to do this too. And I know we've talked about this a lot, thinking about where our fathers started. Yeah. So if you think about where they started, and one thing, I didn't even know where my dad started. I was asking my aunt about my dad growing up, and she had this story where he was just this lively kid, and he was this and he was that. She laughed, and she'd be like, he would come to my house every Saturday and we would eat, or Friday after she got off work, he would stay overnight, blah, 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 blah. And then I asked my grandmother, she was like, he was always bad. And I was like, yeah, but like, what was he like when he was younger? He was always a bad little boy. She didn't have anything. That was all she had to say to me about him. And I was like, yeah, but what was his personality like? Like, even before he, started getting into trouble, like even as a little baby or a little kid, toddler, she couldn't tell me anything. And that let me know, like, your mom is supposed to be the first lover of your soul, right? For sure. And if the first lover of your soul doesn't see anything in you, then, you know what I mean?
Imagine what that looked like.
Yeah. And then his dad used to live in the house, and then his dad wasn't in the house anymore. And his mom had a boyfriend who was a long-term boyfriend, but he didn't parent him. That wasn't his kid. So he didn't parent him. Yeah. And so in the end, he couldn't parent others.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't qualified.
Right. And so I guess that's what's been running through my mind this week. It's not to let my dad off the hook, because I feel like sometimes my dad was super petty, and he treated us as petty as he did anybody else on the street. But I guess even in saying that, his mom treated him like he was anybody on the street. Yeah. And he knew there was something wrong with it, but it doesn't mean that you can come out of it. Just because you could recognize that something doesn't look right, it doesn't mean that it automatically changes your direction. You know what I mean?
It's hard to know that.
It is. And it brought me to something else that I saw, and I shared it with you, but you hadn't seen it yet when I had asked you earlier. And it said, the person who usually breaks the generational curses in your family are the ones that are labeled as difficult. And I think about you, because they're the ones that don't have a problem saying anything to any family member. They're the ones that are always calling something out. They're not uncomfortable with discomfort. And usually the person who is the most difficult is the one that's going to change the most. And I kind of felt like that when I saw that, it immediately reminded me of you. And then it made me think about what I was thinking about all this week about fathers, because you've definitely done that. I remember you being like, you definitely took, you were all about us taking the kids on trips. You definitely sat down and played games with us, but you weren't as present as you are now.
Oh, yeah. So just listening to you, like, I knew that I was doing more than what my father was doing. Mm-hmm. But with that perspective of doing more than he was, if his standard is really low, right, I'm not realizing that my standard is low. I'm just thinking that I'm doing way better than him, but I could be doing a lot more.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand that, because I looked around and it seemed like this is what men were doing. At least that's what my perception of. Mm-hmm. I just, I showed up to all of the important things. I didn't miss those things. We went there. We went places. We went out to eat. We did things together. So in my head, I was going over and beyond. I didn't realize it was like everyday thing. Like I knew, I was there every day, but not as present as you were.
And I don't think that dads come in and be like, you know what, I'm going to be the most trash dad and see where my kid could turn up. Like, are you going to thrive in the face of adversity? Let's see. You know what I mean? And even with women, when we're choosing these men to have children with, it doesn't necessarily mean we know what a father is supposed to look like either, because we're the children of these men as well. And so we don't necessarily know how to interview and properly determine who could be the father too. You know, nobody really knows. But I know that my dad used to go on trips with us, but he didn't like play games with us. He didn't engage with us a lot. So when you would do it, I was like, oh, this is the dude. Like, he's way better than my dad.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it was the best dad. And the same with being a mom. Like, I could be better than a mom that we've seen, but it doesn't mean I'm the best one. And it's a constant growing thing. I don't even think that the generation before us even thought about growing to be better parents. I think that they were just, this is the blueprint. These are the things I have to do. I got to make sure you're fed. You have a roof over your head.
I think it just depends on where they are in their family. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, there are groups of people, like, what's the word about how could I be better? Because when I hear, like, oh, well, like, people talk about, I did this so you wouldn't have to do this.
Yeah.
I think that that's their level of difficulty to break the generational curse financially.
So then they did that part so that we can do this part.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, another thing that's difficult is when you are talking to kids and they're trying to understand why their parent isn't like you. I know that when we went to the promotion ceremony for his students, these kids light up when they see him. And I imagine, and this week they were writing appreciation letters to you. And one of the kids has said, what did he say? When he's doing something he probably shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, he said that he appreciated me because when he's outside of school and he's up to no good, he can hear me say, oh, you fooling, man. Come on, man. He said it makes him second guess him doing something bad. So that's legitimately what I wanted to do for students, to like reduce from making poor decisions.
Yeah. And so you could be the person that models what they would want to see at home, or when they have the opportunity to. Like, they still get the influence somewhere, but it's hard when you have kids and they're trying to figure out why their parent can't be more like this or more like that.
They're not there because their parents are probably where my parents were. Mm-hmm. Just trying to like make it work.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they're probably in a stage where we are.
Yeah. And they're going to be that next step. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm glad that you're the difficult one in your group.
No, me too.
When I think of all your siblings, you're definitely the one that was bucking the system in a whole different way. I think you have more mouth and would speak out about everything. I mean, and it's good to be able to make things uncomfortable in order to change, because you're not going to change and evolve and grow if you're constantly comfortable anyway.
So what are you doing to forgive your father, as far as like, because to me, I feel like when I was going through the process of forgiving him, I still go through it because I think I've forgiven him.
Yeah.
And then I find myself talking sideways about him as if he didn't do all these other things. And it's like, I have to be reminded that he only knew what he knew, and he did the best he could. And if he didn't do that, I mean, where would I be? You know? So I got to believe that everything that he did allowed me to get here.
Yeah. I would say that I thought that I did. I thought I had forgiven my father in 17 when he died. Then in 18, after all of the fallout of his death was over, I kind of felt like I had forgiven him then. But I don't think I really truly had forgiven him until this week. Like, I felt some kind of way listening to my brothers and their experiences, not because I didn't believe them, because I definitely did, because they sound just like who my dad is. But listening to them and seeing how, like, we're watching things. And it was funny. I was telling one of my brothers, it's like, we're laughing. It wasn't funny in the moment. You know how you be in a near-death experience and you be like, oh, it was crazy. And then when it's all over, everybody's safe, you be like, oh, wasn't it funny when you're like, no, that was rough. In the moment, it wasn't funny. So we were laughing, but I'm like, wow, like we all got battle scars. We all came out on the other side with a lesson, knowing more about ourselves, like confrontations we had with our dad, listening to how each of us handle confrontations with our dad, all different. I was really sitting here and I was thinking about it this week, and I was like, okay, I got to think of what this dude was, because he didn't come into this saying he wanted to be a bad dad. Nobody comes in and says, I can't wait to have a kid with somebody so I can ruin the child's life. I just really want to see what it looks like. Nobody goes in with the intention of hurting, but they may go in with like no feeling of needing to connect.
Oh, yeah.
And when I think of my dad, he made sure that he brought home the check. And if he felt like engaging it, like my mom would do stuff with us. If he felt like showing up, he would show up. Like we went bowling or skating. I think he went skating with us before, but very few times. And I guess I had to come to the point where I realized that connecting with your child was never anything he experienced. So why was I supposed to think that nobody trained him? There was no onboarding. There was nothing.
It was a blind spot.
It was definitely a blind spot, but it's so important to want, like, not even just having the skill set to connect, but also wanting to and knowing the value of it. He didn't know that was something that he was supposed to do. But it's weird because I can also say there are people who be like, I never had that, so I'm going to make sure my kids have that. You know,
They may have seen it from somewhere else, though.
Yeah. I think that what brought me to this different level of forgiving my dad this week was being honest about him walking into the role and having no skill set whatsoever. And in the end, how can you be like, it's one thing to be mad at somebody I can be mad at a surgeon who comes in and says, I can do the job. This is what needs to be done. And then comes in and he just stands there and lets me die on the table. I could fault that. He came in with no skill in this job and he didn't promise me anything. He didn't promise that he was going to be anything to me. And he gave what he had. And sometimes it wasn't even on purpose. It was just the experience he gave me because of what he did or those few moments we connected with. And so I do forgive him because I know that he didn't come in wanting to be poor at being a dad. And he never really, and that's the other thing. I remember when we got married, you said, I want to be around married men because I want to understand. My dad wasn't, none of his friends were fully engaged fathers with their kids. So he wasn't even learning on the job like that. You know what I'm saying? Like watching people around him. It just wasn't, so I wish I could say that he should have looked for, but when I think about how he grew up, the men around him as he grew up, his peers, there was no one in his circle except for my mom telling him that he should be more. And I think that my dad had that kind of ego where he felt like he was the man and he knew. So even her words weren't going to mean anything in that moment.
Yeah.
So I could go back and be mad at my grandfather. I could be mad at my godfather, who was his uncle and took him under his wing when he came to Lansing. I could be mad at them, but my grandfather also wasn't a good dad. My my godfather, who was his uncle, he was. And I think that he felt like bringing him here where he could be around him was enough. And it wasn't. He was too far gone. He was 19, started working at GM, making $umpteen an hour. You know, you couldn't tell him nothing. So, I mean, mix my dad's personality with he's already gone these many years without having any guidance. Just being in the vicinity wasn't going to do anything.
Yeah.
So I have to forgive the type of father he was, because he didn't come in trying to ruin anything about me. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like, what about, I don't know, he didn't, it wasn't his intention. Even if he decided to not connect and not be a father, I think he just thought that we were going to be great. And I think part of it was he intended for my mom to make that happen. His thing was, you don't get money for C's or lower on your report card, and you better go to college. And those were his lessons for us. I don't know.
It sounds like my father.
Yeah. What were your father's messages to you? Definitely college. The grades too?
Well, first grade, on the end of the year, I had all A's and B's and 1 C. He got me a remote control car. Second grade, I had all A's and B's. Got me another remote control car, but he said, looks like you know what you're doing. And he never got me another gift for my grades again. So it was just like, that was the expectation, but I never brought anything really lower. So it was like, you really did have to deal with it. But I knew that was a requirement to go to college. And that was the main one.
You go to college?
Yeah, if I die, I don't want to go to college. You get a good shot.
That's how your dad said. He said if he died.
Yeah. What's going to happen if I die? Go to college. If you ask Tony that, what happens if your father dies? Go to college and get a good job.
Wow.
Yep. It wasn't how to get there with nothing. It wasn't like, you need a major. No, nothing. Just go to college.
Well, you know, that was outside of his wheelhouse. He didn't have to do that.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. It was just like, hey, take the torch, son, and go further than I did.
Yeah, he for sure allowed me to do what I wanted to do. Like see, that's why I said you can't really hold it against them, because in our generation, we had that ability to, like, after we got to a certain age, internet was around, so we could get more exposure to like how to grow.
Yeah.
Like now, if your friends around you are not providing answers or an example, you have to look for people that's practicing those things. It was a lot easier to find them.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. They only had their circle.
Exactly. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to go to the next town or, you know, it's just like, this is all you got.
Yeah. And you're not going to just be like, you know what? Y'all ain't really doing what I want to do. Let me go find a whole new crew.
Yeah. You don't even have information to say do that. Like, that sounds crazy.
It does. It does. So what do you think the kids are going to have to forgive you for?
Poor decisions in my past. Not giving them stuff that my father gave me that I didn't know I was not giving to them. I think they're going to hold me accountable. I just hope that by the time they hold me accountable, I have the words for them to receive and be like, I get it. You know, because I think the most difficult part of the journey of getting to know yourself is being able to ask those questions. Our father's no longer here.
Yeah.
So it's like we have to come up with a best solution for us to be able to understand why it worked and why it didn't work. Them, they can ask us, and they have all of the audio and video to be able to go back and see what we were thinking at a certain age.
Yeah.
So to me, they'll find gratitude a lot sooner than we will, because we're still finding it, you know, because we don't have anybody to be able to answer other than secondhand information in our forgotten memories.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I pray Dave forgives me for, you know, she was the first kid. So everything was practice. Everything was trial and error. And I remember I used to always say, I'm not going to be that mom that raises the daughter and loves the son. But with her, I was always like directive. When Dallas, I was far more protected. And I think that that part is what both of them will have to forgive me for. He'll have to forgive me. Well, I pray he forgives me for not being more directive and really modeling what she'll get out in the world, for her not being soft enough. Because I don't know, I feel like mothers, we're trying to make sure that our daughters are going to be self-sufficient, and they don't feel too much, but you're going to be able to stand on your own. And we miss out on so much of our girls being able to be loved and nurtured, and we miss out on some of that.
I definitely did.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be, that's what they're I guess I should be addressing it now.
It's always good, or be ready to like try to figure out how they're going to understand. But I think it's easier for you to be able to do it because they've seen all of that with you. You just was trying to do the best you could with the information that you had.
Yeah, that was, but that just shows I'm still learning on the job.
Absolutely.
I'm still learning on.
Just like any other parent.
Yeah. It's, every day is the first day of parenting that kid with that experience with, over that time. It's like, parenting day today is different than yesterday because she's experienced different things. And now, like I said, every experience you have, you've evolved. You're not going to be the same person day after day. You're constantly moving and changing unless you're not engaging with anybody or doing anything.
Yeah.
And with them, I'm constantly trying to figure out the best way to do it. Doesn't mean I'm successful all the time, but A for effort.
Definitely that.
Yeah.
Anybody want to give a shout out before we get out of here?
No, not today.
Well, shout out to all the parents who are doing their best. When I say best, I mean doing more, not only more than your parents, but trying to find ways to give your kids, the blind spots you didn't even know about.
Yeah.
It will create a different kid, and hopefully they'll have a lot more information when it's time for them to do it. Y'all make today better than yesterday. Don't worry about anything you can't control. GATA. Get after that action, or that action will get after you. Be great on purpose. Go.